A reading from the book of Sirach. Elijah arose, a prophet like fire, and his words burned like a torch. He brought a famine upon them, and by his zeal he made them few in number. By the word of the Lord he shut up the heavens, and also 3 times brought down fire. How glorious you were, Elijah, in your wondrous deeds! Whose glory is equal to yours? You raised a corpse from death and from Hades, by the word of the Most High. You sent kings down to destruction and famous men from their sickbeds. You heard rebuke at Sinai and judgments of vengeance at Horeb. You anointed kings to inflict retribution and prophets to succeed you. You were taken up by a whirlwind of fire in a chariot with horses of fire. At the appointed time it is written, you are destined to calm the wrath of God before it breaks out in fury, to return the hearts of parents to their children, and to restore the tribes of Jacob. Happy are those who saw you and were adorned with your love, for we also shall surely live. When Elijah was enveloped in the whirlwind, Elisha was filled with the Spirit. He performed twice as many signs and marvels with every utterance of his mouth. Never in his lifetime did he tremble before any ruler, nor could anyone intimidate him at all. Nothing was too hard for him, and when he was dead, his body prophesied. In his life, he did wonders, and in death, his deeds were marvelous.
I'll touch on both the gospel and the reading that we just heard today, but focusing a bit more on the reading from Sirach. A theme that we can draw from our readings today is the life-giving nature of the Judeo-Christian wisdom tradition that culminates with Jesus. We're in the middle of a 3-week period now where we are journeying with the first and second books of Kings, historical books from the Old Testament. And these passages over this 3-week period tell the works of the prophets Elijah and Elisha. They served during a time when God's chosen people were divided into 2 kingdoms, into Israel and Judah. And these 2 prophets did most of their ministry in the northern kingdom, Israel. So what does this have to do with today's readings? You may be wondering. Today we make a jump to the book of Sirach, as this passage in Sirach reflects the ministry of Elijah and Elisha. The book of Sirach was written in around the 3rd to 2nd centuries BC, and we know it was written by one person, Ben-Sira. He lived in Jerusalem, was a high respected scholar and elder in the Jewish world, had traveled some and was familiar with the beliefs of other cultures. During his time, Greek philosophy was coming into the Jewish world, and as a result, Ben-Sira set out to synthesize the Jewish faith wisdom tradition to demonstrate its superiority for the purpose of helping the Jewish people remain true to their faith in God. Most of the book's focus is on Jewish faith wisdom. It is only in the latter part and just before the conclusion that Ben-Sira writes about the great leaders of God's chosen people, the patriarchs, the early kings, and the prophets. Which brings us to our first reading, where we hear about the prophets Elijah and Elisha, hearing about Elijah's great power, the crossing of the river Jordan twice on dry ground, which parallels Moses and God's chosen people crossing the Red Sea, Elijah being taken up into heaven, and Elisha's demonstration of power give further witness of them being in God's favor and being blessed by God. Ben-Sira includes this piece of history to recall God has been present with God's chosen people, and it's interweaving with the Jewish wisdom tradition. The Jewish wisdom tradition is synonymous with the Jewish faith tradition from which Jesus expresses the gospel. And prayer is central to this tradition. Jesus' introduction to the Our Father here in our gospel is qualified as to not do what the Gentiles do. And it is a very sweeping warning that is intended to warn against the different religious beliefs that the Jewish people were increasingly encountering. Jesus' prayer acknowledges the God of Israel is the one God of all, from whom all blessings come, and the importance of forgiveness. It is out of forgiveness that Jesus came among us and shares himself in the Eucharist, and we give thanks for this gift. May we draw from our wisdom and prayer tradition as we continue our journey in the way of Christ.